I have seen so many times the inability to read that ending and to actually act on it with leaders cause massive problems. Whether that is about you staying too long as the leader when your approach actually doesn't serve the organisation anymore, or your tendencies, preferences, skill set is not the type of leadership required. So you actually become the ceiling and the organisation cannot grow because you are stopping it from growing. Whether that is about you not being brave enough to let a team member go who no longer fits, where your avoidance of that difficult conversation not only means that they stay in a role that doesn't actually suit or serve them, but you also create tension, confusion, dissonance, a whole bunch of problems for the people that work with or report to that person. All of those things have negative flow-on effects, whether it's about you refusing to close off or stop a certain product or service that actually does not fit with where your business is going. Any of those pieces where you don't embrace in a healthy way and end something well in order to step into the next chapter or to create space for the new, you are limiting and really preventing your organisation from achieving what it could. So I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to learn to identify those endings and then to be brave enough to make the necessary decisions as a leader, whether that is about you, a team member, a product, a service, a strategy, whatever it is. It can look a whole bunch of different ways, but not sticking to our guns or sticking to a strategy simply because either we made it, that decision, and we don't want to admit that it didn't work out, or because it has been so successful for us to date, and so we're just hoping that we can make it work and we don't want to let go of it. Any of those pieces are what we need to consider when we think about the importance of endings. The last of the questions that I want to touch on now was framed this way. What makes it bold to intentionally build a business to be successful and make a positive impact? I love this question, and there's lots of aspects to starting to think in this way, where you're changing the way you run your business to enable you to have that financial sustainability, the success in some of those ways that society labels success for your business, to be having the sustainable growth in place, to be long-term viable, simply from the perspectives of revenue over cost, profit in the business, etc. To have those things while also making a positive impact in the world, and whatever that looks like for you, that is a bold decision for many, many reasons. One is that it requires you to actually be willing to question the status quo, to be able to pull apart those pieces that we've been talking about today around some of the components that can be just unconscious. We've taken on board other people's views, other people's ideas about what business is, how a business should operate. It is a bold move to start to operate your business differently, because you are going to have to question those narratives, question those ideas about the purpose and role of business, and say, actually, I'm not just going to accept that I have to do things in a certain way. Who says? And why does it have to be done that way? What if it was done differently? So it's bold because it requires you to question things. It's also bold because it requires you to be willing to potentially look naive for a period of time at least. Because there will be people who will question your decisions or your priorities or the time frames that you are now making decisions over. And so you're going to have to be able to sit comfortably in that space and be okay with the fact that you will potentially look naive to some people while things take shape, while you get foundations in place and build out this new way of doing business for you. The other aspect that makes it a bold move is that you're not going to have easy answers anymore, and you won't necessarily have proof for the things that you are going to need to do or the decisions you're going to need to make. You won't be in a position where you have the comfort, you won't have that comfort that people have when they live in the black and white of an either or mindset. The comfort that people can feel in that space is actually not real or true, but it can still feel safer, known, predictable, even if all of the evidence would show that it's not actually that. And so you are going to need to be comfortable with that piece. You're not going to have easy answers for yourself or your team or those that are asking questions of you. And you won't necessarily be able to prove with the evidence or the data or the track record certain aspects related to your decisions. So you're going to have to sit with, it's going to be that piece of discernment and judgment. And you're going to then need to hold your ground as you step into and make these decisions. And the last piece that I would touch on related to why it's a bold move is around the fact that you're going to need to be much more long-term in your thinking. You're going to need to learn to be a big picture thinker. So looking at different time horizons and taking into account a much broader contextual frame of the business landscape, the time and place you're operating in, that competitive landscape, the changes around compliance or regulation, the changes and shifts in expectations of customers, of employees, all of these pieces that require you to have a longer term view and a bigger picture where you have zoomed out and started to take into account many more factors that were previously seen as externalities or were just not even on the radar, just ignored altogether. It is a bold move to bring these worlds back together because that is what you're going to have to do. Longer term thinking, bigger picture thinking.